Hey guys, one of the things I talked about at the recent Okie Homesteading Expo was about black market items during World War II. And the top black market item during World War II was beef because they were being stolen. The cattle rustling was off the charts during World War II. Most of the meat products were being taken overseas to the troops. And so people who were living back here, in the country, you just couldn't get, meat products and everything was rationed. So there's lots of stories on rationing and things like that. So I made that point, and as I've talked about before on my channel, and I'm going to talk about again today, is that when it comes down to, there's going to be a return of the cowboy. There will be a cowboy return, a cowboy rebirth. The primary purpose of a cowboy was to protect the herd, protect the flock. You had people who were paid by the flock owners, by the herd owners, to go out there and protect those animals. And yes, they did other chores too, like rounding them up and herding them from place to place when they went to market, or to brand them, or just various tasks that they had. But their number one job, their whole purpose in being, was to protect the herd. And that's where we're going again today. Cattle rustling is going through the roof yet again. And not just here, but in overseas. We'll talk about that here in a second. But let me just talk about some of the recent, and I did a video on this, a few months back, talking about all the recent cattle rustling events, but it's something I'm monitoring, and I want to continue to show you that this is happening. And I made that point in that lecture that I just gave at the Okie Homesteading Expo, that when you have gardens, when you have animals, when you have livestock, it's good to keep them close. Okay, most people, on our level cannot afford to hire a bunch of cowboys to go out, and we don't have big herds anyway. We have enough herds to maybe sustain for ourselves, for food production, and maybe to buy and sell here and there and to share a limited amount of those. But it's a matter of keeping them close, and historically that's what people who had small herds, homestead animals did. They kept those animals close so that they could monitor them. You want them to be within eyesight. You want to be, if something happens on your property, you want to know about it. Let's take a look at some of these articles. This is only increasing. This article, like the ones I shared before in the last video a couple months back, shows you that it's not just happening out west. This is in South Carolina. One person was arrested by the Aiken County Sheriff Office on Thursday for the theft of livestock. According to the spokesperson for the ACSO, deputies were searching in the area and around Bluff Landing Road for a subject who had warrants filed against him for alleged theft of cattle worth an estimated $90,000. This guy, Brian Furman Lee, age 41, resident of Jackson, South Carolina, was arrested on March 6th. After the search, Lee was then located and then placed into custody. So here's a guy in South Carolina stealing cattle. And as I've showed in the other videos, it's not just out west. It's in other places too. But yes, out west, it is happening as well. Most of the cattle is held out west in various states. This one here, Texas and Oklahoma. A special ranger makes arrest amid 82 head of cattle theft across Texas and Oklahoma. The two men arrested were charged with theft of livestock, organized criminal activity, which involves 6 ranches and a sale barn. So a lot of times what these are doing, it's like stolen cars. You steal the car and you take it and you try to sell that. And the people who buy these stolen cars often know that these are stolen, that it's a hot car. It's the same with sometimes the sale barns are even involved with this. I don't think that was the case for here, but it has been the case in examples previous. This one here, someone at the sale barn recognized the brand as a stolen brand and then reported it. And, they had been investigating these people for a while, and they finally caught up with them and caught them. But they're basically trying to steal these cattle and flip them. And so this was a money-making opportunity here. Steal the cattle, flip them, and sell them, and hopefully get the money and then take off and then, rinse and repeat. But let's think about this for a second. How do you steal 82 head of cattle? Okay, it has to be a large ranch where this is involved, or a large number. It says 6 ranches here were involved. So it's got to be a large area, a place where the owner's probably not going to be able to notice a stock trailer pulling up, and then a bunch of guys coming out with ATVs probably, and then rounding up cattle and then loading them into the stock trailer and then taking off. So it's got to be quick, but it doesn't have to be that quick because the owner, it's a large area of land that the owner cannot monitor 24/7, thus bringing back the cowboy. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Over in Oklahoma, in a separate incident, it says Fort Worth, Texas, Mark Dennis, a Hollis, Oklahoma man, was arrested March 12th at his residence on felony charges for larceny of livestock following an investigation by the Texas Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association. Dennis unlawfully took possession of 4 red Angus cows between the ages of 3 and 5 from a property in Harmon County, March 9th through 10th. Dennis attempted to sell 2 of the cows, concealing the remaining livestock. Sheriff Cornett successfully located and recovered the hidden cattle. So this is more an example of someone stealing just a few head of cattle. And this was more along the lines of what took place back during World War II. Someone would come up, steal a few cows, and then take off with those cows. It was hard to, people didn't have large stock trailers back in World War II. They didn't have the ability to move that amount of cattle. But what they did was they took 2 and 3 and 4. And this is something that you're seeing a huge rise on. People who raise a number of animals, all of a sudden they go out to their cattle, their herd, and they're counting their cattle, and they find that there's a few missing. It's a lot easier to steal 2 or 3, and the owner may not notice right away. And so and then those 2 or 3 can either be taken to a sale barn or then just butchered for your own consumption, and that meat sold to people who are unsuspecting. Now, the story I want to get to today is over in the UK. And I know some people are like, well, that's the UK, that's not the US. But I'm telling you, it's happening everywhere. And I believe, even though these articles will not say this, this is a result of the influx of foreigners that have come into the UK and the inability of the UK government to act on it because it might appear as racist. So they're just letting this happen. And the farmers are on the verge of bankruptcy over in the UK because there's no enforcement. At least here in the United States, we have enforcement still. Law enforcement will work with these local ranchers and farmers to track down these criminals. It's something serious. I mean, let's not forget, in this country, the birthplace of the cowboy, if you got caught stealing cattle, there was a hangman's noose in your future. I mean, that was just it, or you were just shot on sight. There was outlaw or backwoods justice that took place. So here's the story on this one. It's beginning to feel like the Wild West up here when it comes to sheep crime. It's soul destroying, says farmer Colin Abel, scanning his flock high up on the West Dartmoor farmland. No, it's not going to feel like the Wild West, because in the Wild West, there was justice that was administered to people who were caught stealing animals. This winter, like most years, Mr. Abel is missing more than 400 ewes. He says in the last decade, he has lost nearly 500,000 pounds worth of livestock, that's pounds in European, British money, worth of livestock to sheep rustling, which is pushing some farmers to the brink of quitting or bringing their flocks off the moors. Basically, they're going to quit. Devon and Cornwall Police says livestock theft is challenging to police, but its officers are pursuing every line of inquiry through forensics, surveillance, tracking, and more. But they're not bringing anybody to justice. So this article was posted on February, so last month, and now we have a new article that came out just the other day on the same topic. This was posted earlier here in March. It says the sheep theft epicenter where farmers are losing 500,000 pounds of livestock. It says here the upland landscape where the sheep graze is completely wild and away from human settlements. Again, prime target for people to come up and take as many as they want and then be off without anyone being the wiser. Around 34,000 people live in the national park, but that's mostly in the towns and villages dotted around. Much of the park is peatland or bogs at times, and the cattle get swallowed up. Police believe the sheep are rounded up with dogs and quad bikes, again, ATVs, at nighttime into vans or even taken in broad daylight by people involved in the livestock industry who have knowledge of how to move and process sheep. Oh, yeah, it's just other farmers that are... it's not the foreigners. You got to throw that in there. Come on. My favorite part of the article is this. We often do not know who's doing it, but we know it must be someone who can catch, process, and make money from the crime. Thanks, Captain Obvious. And it is more than just theft. These animals may be illegally slaughtered with their disease and medicine status unknown, making this a national food security issue. Yes. The real crime, is not them being stolen. The real crime here is putting everyone in danger because we don't know the disease status. They haven't been properly vaccinated, poked. So because of that, that's what's really causing all the danger, all of the germs that might be going around out there from people eating things like meat. For PC Julian Fry of Devon and Cornwall Police Rural Affairs Team, the thefts on Dartmoor are a continuing menace, exacerbated by the fact that there are currently limited effective tracking devices for livestock. For instance, satellite tracking collars can be placed upon animals, but these are often very expensive, visible to thieves, and easily removed. Microchips, such as those often used in cats and dogs, are not recommended for animals destined for the food chain. Despite there having been no prosecutions for sheep theft in the past 5 years, so the thieves have nothing to worry about. There's not going to be any prosecutions. Your chances of getting caught are slim. Even if you do, they're probably just, and you're a foreigner, you're definitely going back out on the streets with apologies for intruding on your time. He insists his teams are constantly working on how to improve forensics, tracking, and surveillance to help target the criminals. Here's an idea. How about you arm the farmers? See, back in World War II, when these cattle rustlers and cattle rustling was at an all-time high because that was the #1 black market item in the United States, ranchers, when they caught someone stealing cattle, they shot them. It was that simple. And so there was a barrier. You can do this, and it's a #1 black market item. So if you can get away with it, you're going to get paid. But if you get caught, chances of you making it to the other side of morning are probably slim to none. We have 4 rural police officers for Devon and Cornwall, and we have a huge amount of passion and drive to support the farmers, he says. These crimes can be hard to tackle. There's no CCTV, and often they are only reported retrospectively because it takes time for the farmers to go out and count the sheep and realize, oh, there's some missing. But we are constantly looking at cutting-edge forensics and technology to catch the culprits. The cutting-edge technology that you're looking for is a bullet. It's been around for a while. Maybe you've heard of them. Cole says that while it wasn't his worst year for theft, the general trend is magnifying, and he believes because of the rising value of sheep and cattle. Okay, so this is why we got to discuss, why is there a rising value for sheep and cattle? People over in the UK, they love their sheep, they love their lamb, they love that. So the reason it's becoming so valuable is because the UK government is limiting, I'm having trouble speaking today, limiting the public's ability to get it, especially foreigners who come in poor and don't have the means to go out and buy, meat products. And so that's who's stealing these things. Let's make no bones about it. It's the foreigners coming in and they're stealing the stuff. They're finding out, hey, you can do this easily and get away with it. And there are no repercussions. And if you do get caught, they're probably just going to let you go because it'd be racist to do anything otherwise. So the only way you stop this is enforcement, and there needs to be punishment. But we've taken away the hurt that is a result of stupid. That's why my best-selling shirt of all time is "Stupid Should Hurt." You can find if you meet me at some of these events I'm at, you can buy a shirt. Teespring often sells them down below. You can find the link for those shirts, but it often takes Teespring a couple months to get them delivered because Teespring is just an inept corporation, obviously, apparently. So anyway, all that to say, I digress. The result of this is the comeback of the cowboy, because what's going to happen is what is happening is meat prices are already off the charts. They're already increasing, but it's only going to exacerbate that price increase when you have to now hire manual labor to go out and monitor your animals. And the UK is going to have to come to this conclusion that they won't have cowboys, they won't have 6-shooters because their government has completely disarmed their public. But what they're probably going to have to do, they can't get cameras, they can't get forensics and technology. They're going to have boots on the ground for this sort of thing. And that's going to cost money. That's going to cost labor expenses. And so the prices of meat are going to go up. And that's probably what the World Economic Forum wants. I mean, we've been seeing this for years, a push towards making it harder, making it more expensive to get these meat items, meat products that you want, which is why we have all of these things that are being pushed over here in our country, like from Bill Gates, the Beyond Meat products and the Impossible Burger and all these things, and mung bean eggs. I've showed that before on my videos. It's just too hard to grow these animals. They get stolen, they spread disease, they're dirty. Just have some mung bean eggs. That's the real goal here, to give you an alternative, an Impossible Burger, So if you want your meat fix, you can get it from there rather than from these disease-ridden animals that are too expensive to grow because we have foreigners in our country who can't be kept at bay because we have the lack of fortitude to do what's right in this country and in other countries. And so that's there you go. And that's probably going to be viewed as my racist rant on YouTube here today. Which is why people don't watch my videos, because YouTube doesn't share them. So like and share my videos on social media, and that helps get the word out. But no, seriously, that's where the World Economic Forum is going. The World Economic Forum is pushing for this. They don't want you to eat meat because, after all, it's destroying the environment. And that's the excuse they give. It's not really destroying the environment. It's allowing you to not have the control that they would like over you. Food has always been used as a way to manipulate and control people because people like food. It's one of these things that are just necessary to stay alive. And so the way we do that is we remove that and make you come to us. There's a story about Joseph Stalin years ago who basically took a chicken and he plucked out all the feathers in front of all of his commanders, one by one, until the chicken was completely bare. And he let the chicken go and it ran off into the corner, and he pulled out in his pocket some grains of food. And he held it down to the chicken, and the chicken walked over to him and began eating the grains out of his hand. And he turned to his commanders and said, see, this is how we control the people. You know, we can pluck them, we can take all their feathers, but they'll still come to us for food. Even if it's mung bean eggs, because they'll be hungry. So the one way we do this is to, how do you stand up to Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum? You're going to have a government that does that. And right now, it seems like we don't have the government, even the new government, with a spine to do anything that's right. So I don't know. How I'm preparing to do this is living in a rural community where I can grow food on my own, grow livestock for my family, and maybe have a few extra to share and sell. And then it is what it is. And if any government agent comes up my driveway and demands that I turn them over to them, well, there's just the end of my life, because I'm going to go out with a bang. What do you think? Okay. If you don't notice, I don't put any ads in the middle of my videos. When I upload a video, YouTube will ask me, hey, do you want mid-roll ads? And I'm like, no, I don't want mid-roll ads, because when I watch videos that I find interesting, the last thing I want to have my concentration interrupted by is some annoying ad by some detergent company or whatever. I don't want to hear that stuff. I'll put ads at the beginning of my videos and I'll put ads at the end of my videos. And so I keep my videos mid-roll free. So that's why I want to talk to you about some of the things that I support, and I get paid less for that. And I don't care. It's fine by me. I don't make as much money on my YouTube. People don't make much money on YouTube anyway these days. That's just the truth. So today we're going to talk about my Patreon, okay? I did a video the other day. We're going to talk about chickens, and malaria. Another thing I mentioned in my talk at the Okie Homesteading Expo was the fact that Disney keeps chickens. Did you know that? Did you know you can find chickens at Disney? And I'll tell you about that here in a second. But in my books, right here, these books that I give away for my patrons for joining for as little as $1 a month. You can find these on Amazon. I think the last price I saw with this one was like $500 or something like that, $400. And then this one was like over $2,000. And these contain great amounts of information when it comes to using tinctures. It doesn't tell you how to make a tincture. There's plenty of videos for that. It tells you how to identify the plants that are in your backyard most of the time and how to use them once you make a tincture. For what reason? Malaria has been one of the things that I have been talking about, because malaria, for the most part, in the last 50 years or so, has been kept at bay, especially in the last 100 years. Back during the Civil War, did you know that the Union troops suffered more from malaria than the Southern troops, because a lot of the Southern troops had built up an immunity. They were used to malaria going around. They had probably suffered from it before, and they had built up an endurance, a bodily endurance. And so a lot of the Southern troops, but when the Northern troops invaded the South, they suffered heavily from malaria because they were not used to it, because malaria didn't exist so much up north because of the colder temperatures. And this is one of the reasons I point out that if there is a collapse, and this is what my talk was on over at the Okie Homesteading Expo, I made the point that you can prepare your homestead for collapse. And one of the ways you do that is medicinally. Because if there's a collapse, disease is going to take out far more people than mutant zombie bikers coming up your driveway. That is a guarantee. History tells us that. The number one killer of all humanity throughout all of history has been the mosquito. The mosquito. Okay, and malaria plays a big part in that. They estimate, one estimate said that over half of all humans who have ever lived were killed by the mosquito. Now, I don't know if that's true. That's an estimate that I found online. Seems kind of crazy. But if that's true, malaria and other mosquito-borne illnesses should, be of an interest to you on how do I mitigate that for my homestead, because it's going to make a comeback. If there's a collapse, you people living in Florida and people living in the South are going to have a hard time because you don't have an immunity like people who lived over 100 years ago who didn't have air conditioning and they didn't have ways to, tackle this issue. You're going to have a severe issue with malaria. And I technically live in the South, and so this is a concern. So the last few years, I've been building up some ingredients to build a malaria tincture. Malaria, most people don't know, is actually a parasite. It's not viral. It's not bacterial. It's a parasite. And so here I have this tincture I made. I have to separate it. It's been there for a while, since last spring, but this is Mayapple root. And they say it's really good for parasites. The other one that a lot of you guys probably are aware of is this one here. It's black walnut hull. Black walnut hull. Great for parasites. Another one, too, I'm going to be making soon. I got a whole bunch of bulk cloves, whole cloves. Again, another ingredient that's fantastic for parasites. And so I'm going to be making tinctures, and I'm going to be combining them, to make a malaria-type tincture. Disney, that destroyer of worlds that I often rail against here on my channel. If you go to Disney, and I lived in Florida, I lived in Orlando when I went to college for a few years, and while I was there, I had attended some Disney resorts and here and there. You get to visit some places and see some things. I noticed, and other people have noticed too, that often tucked away in a corner or behind a bush or behind a building, there's a small cage with a few chickens in it. You're like, what's those chickens doing there? They seem kind of out of place. But if you walk around the Disney parks, and some of you have left comments before when I've mentioned this, you will notice little cages with a few chickens in it. The reason why those are there is because they are called Sentinel chickens. Sentinel chickens. And what they do is they come around every so often. They take blood from those chickens because the chicken will identify in their blood that malaria is in the area. Malaria is in the area. So the mosquitoes will come in and they'll get on the chicken, and then they'll deposit their parasite of malaria into the chicken, and it's very easily picked up by the blood. And so the scientists know, hey, malaria is in the area, and they'll bring in their trucks and they'll spray the heck out of the area to make sure that the Disney attendees' experience is not interrupted by a mosquito. Did you know that in Florida, around, especially in Orlando, in the Disney area, they have all of these tunnels? They're called Joe tunnels, and that's to keep the water moving so that mosquitoes can't get a foothold in all these water spots. Did you know? And I lived in Florida, so I noticed most ponds that are low, because it's a paved over swamp, Florida is. Most of these ponds all have fountains. Oh, it's a pretty fountain. No. That's there to keep the mosquito down, to keep the water moving so the mosquitoes can't get a hold in the water. And all those Joe tunnels keep that water moving underground in order to keep the mosquitoes from getting a foothold in those ponds. They have been spending millions upon millions of dollars. I think the budget for Florida is like $100 million. That's the state. That's not even including Disney. Hundreds of millions of dollars on keeping the mosquito at bay. And if that all goes away one day, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to deal with malaria. And so that's why I push these books. These are one of the amazing things that you will find inside of these books, and it's why they're so expensive. It's the valuable information contained within. These were written over 100 years ago by a guy named Dr. A.B. Howard, right there, Dr. A.B. Howard. And there's all kinds of tinctures listed in here, but the tinctures are telling you what they're used for, how to identify the plants. They're full of color photos, and if you join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, just as little as, if you join for higher levels, I really appreciate it. If you can join for a higher level, And there's other benefits for that too. In fact, my Crockett level patrons are getting this coming up very soon. My youngest son has been packaging these. So these are going out the door starting today, I believe. Cold smoked salt for patrons. They get other things. And also a way to get our new recipe book for Perfect Pickler. That's also going to be included with that. So I'm telling you right now, get these books as little as $1 a month. Download them. The link is down below for my Patreon. It takes you directly to this where you can join my Patreon and then download these. And I even give you a link to a company that will print these books for you if you don't want to print them yourself. But get them printed. Get them hard copied. Because if the grid goes down, the cloud's going to be down. And so you're not going to have access to these things. Forget the cloud. You want hard copies of this stuff. So go ahead and get them printed. If you want to have them printed locally, fine. But you can print them yourself. I know a lot of people who print them themselves. I'm telling you, these will give you tinctures. They will give you ideas so that you can have ways to combat this disease, and that's going to take out far more people than those mutant zombie bikers that are coming up your driveway. Okay, disease has always been the #1 killer during times of collapse and calamity. All right. We'll leave it at that. I appreciate you letting me spew my shill stuff for a while because I don't put ads in the middle of my videos, and I want to get the word out there for some of these things. It does help support the channel. Also, check out perfectpickler.com if you're interested in gut health, making your own probiotics at home. It's a lot healthier than those probiotics you're going to buy at the store. All right, love you guys. Share the video, share the video, share the video, like the video, and I'll see you next time in the Homestead. Bye. Have you ever gone to a health food store and seen all those small bottles of probiotics in your cooler section? Man, can they be pricey. Are you really getting all you need to improve your gut health from those expensive bottles? How viable are they? Most of those products claim to give you between 8 and 15 strains of gut-healthy healing bacteria. Think of each strain of bacteria as a different factory in your gut. Each factory is responsible for breaking down that food in its own way. The more factories you have, the more the food is broken down and the easier the food is absorbed and digested by the body. A 2018 study published by the National Library of Medicine shows that one fermented head of cabbage can produce up to 114 strains of beneficial bacteria. That's a lot more food factories than you're getting from that expensive pill bottle. And that's just cabbage. Imagine the probiotics when you add garlic, onions, pepper, and more to that ferment. PerfectPickler.com and its home fermentation kits provide you with everything you need to get started making your own gut-healthy food factories from the comfort of your own kitchen. PerfectPickler.com even provides a jam-packed recipe book with many of our kits. Visit PerfectPickler.com and start fermenting your own veggies to begin your journey to better gut health. That's PerfectPickler.com. Hey guys, did you know you can become a patron of an American Homestead? They get access to private videos, and we send them gifts from the Homestead that we make here on the Homestead. And we also enter our patrons into special giveaways that are only available to them. And before you go, please check out these other great videos. Go ahead, click. Oh wait.